Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was a Boeing 777-200ER. It took off March 8th in 2014 at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, transporting 239 people to Beijing, China, when it randomly vanished in thin air. Today on the Mysteries of the World, we unpack what happened to Malaysia Flight 370. Everything seemed normal at first. I mean, this was a reliable airplane that was powered by two Rolls-Royce Trent 892 engines. I didn't even know Rolls-Royce makes plane engines. I guess it's like a common thing. I'm not very, So how does this completely normal flight from Malaysia to Beijing turn into the biggest mystery in aviation history? After the plane took off at around 12:42 a.m., right around 1:09 a.m., the ACARS, or Aircraft Communications and Addressing System, I didn't have to read that. I know what that is. I knew that. I did not have to read that, right? You didn't see anything. This is a system which regularly sends aircraft performance to the Boeing and the other companies connected to them, but it randomly just stopped transmitting out of the blue, which does not happen. It doesn't shut off automatically. You have to physically deactivate it, which is very odd. The airplane took off at 12:42, and just about 25 minutes later, the transmitting to tell the performance just randomly poofs. It's just gone. It's weird. Then at 1:19 a.m., only about 12 minutes after it stops transmitting information, the pilot sends out one kind of creepy message.
Good night, Malaysia 370.
I don't know, it gives me shivers. I don't think it's not meant to be weird. It's not a out of the ordinary type of message to be sending out to air traffic control, but it's just with the context of the scenario, it's a little creepy. But that would be the last words and the last thing we would ever hear from Malaysia Flight 370. At about 1:22 a.m., the transmitter stops transmitting data and civilian air traffic control loses the plane instantly. However, although it was invisible to air traffic control, the military radar still had it on the radar. The military was still able to track it from 1:22 a.m. till 2:22 a.m. That's what makes it very, very weird. Why would the data stop being sent to air traffic control, but the military could still see it? That, to me, looks like someone intentionally turned it off, because otherwise if they got into a mid-air crash or something of that sort, they wouldn't be able to see it on the military tracker. It wouldn't still be moving, but it was. But while it was on the military radar, something very, very weird happened. It suddenly took a very sharp left turn, which seemed very deliberate to anybody that watched it. The path from Malaysia to Beijing was pretty straightforward. People have done it many, many times, so to take a random left out of the blue after your transmitters and your data just stopped working, it seemed very, very weird. Peculiar, some may say. I was going to say peculiar. That would have been so much cooler. Seemed very, very peculiar. That would have sounded so much cooler if I did. At 2:22 a.m., the final radio contact was made. After that, the people in the military could not even see the plane. Nobody could see the plane. But the plane was still sending out these things called handshakes. That's the nickname for them. A handshake is an automated symbol that gets sent through satellites every hour or so to basically let everybody know, hey, we're doing good, we're flying, we're alive, right? So although the air traffic control data stopped at 1:22 a.m. and the military data stopped at 2:22 a.m., we could still see the plane was still moving, still functional, and still flying through handshakes. Every single hour, it would send one little signal up to the satellites up there, basically letting us know, hey, we're good. A handshake signal doesn't really need much. It just needs to be connected to a satellite and needs to be functioning. The plane needs to be moving. But through that, we know that the plane didn't go down at 2:22 a.m. because the signals were still going on. The signals wouldn't be able to go on if the plane was crashed. However, still, we didn't know what was going on. The last thing we heard from the plane verbally was at 1:09 a.m. when he sent that, message out. Good night. Good night. It just seems a little creepy. I don't know. It's a normal thing. It is a normal thing. It just seems creepy in the context of the situation. So even though we didn't know where the plane was, we couldn't see it on the military radar, we still had these handshakes on from 3:41 a.m., confirming the plane was still powered and connected to the satellite. Then 4:41 a.m., 5:41 a.m., 6:41 a.m., 7:41 a.m. Then at 8:19 a.m., the signals stopped. So this huge plane transporting 239 people literally vanished in thin air. So let's delve in on how this reliable plane with a very trusted and respected pilot randomly vanished in thin air. No distress signals, no stress, just one final message.
Good night, Malaysia 370.
After the flight vanished, the whole entire world was freaking out because this stuff has never happened. A plane has never disappeared in this way. It started one of the largest search parties in all of aviation history, conducting with Malaysia, China, Vietnam, Australia, the US, and several others all band together to look for this plane. 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 They were looking for the plane, but they couldn't find the plane. They were trying their best, but they couldn't find the plane. But nothing was found. Weeks later, investigators looked over the satellites from the military and saw the handshake, as we already talked about, the handshakes, you know. Every hour or so, they would be sending a handshake up to the satellite, letting them know, hey, we're good. But this totally changed the investigation because everybody who was searching for them wasn't searching in the right area. They didn't know about this plane still going on. They were searching around the area of when it lost contact, because they thought maybe it went down there. But as we know now, the air traffic control lost data around 1:22 a.m. and the military kept tracking them until 2:22 a.m. But 6 hours after that, they were still flying. It's proof that they were still flying through the handshake signals. Once discovering this, the search moved to the southern Indian Ocean, which is one of the most remote places in all of planet Earth. The place they believe the plane crashed was thousands of miles from any known land, and probably 15 to 20,000 feet deep in the ocean. For example, the Titanic was found at 12,500 feet in the water, and it took us 73 years to find the Titanic at 12,500 feet, and this is supposedly around 15 to 20,000 feet. And the thing that makes it a lot worse is the southern Indian Ocean is very different than where we found the Titanic. Where we found the Titanic, it was more of a flattish seabed. This has a lot of canyons, a lot of mountains, and a lot of other stuff underwater that makes it very hard to find any debris. This isn't like any other oceans. There's no oil rigs, no transporting ships, no islands, no nothing. Just deep blue sea. The weather in this part of the ocean was also crazy. It was always unpredictable, making the search all that much harder. This part of the ocean was known to sailors to be extremely dangerous and extremely unforgiving. From 2014 to 2020, a search pursued to find the missing plane, covering over 120,000 kilometer square feet. That's crazy. 120,000 kilometer square feet. I actually don't know what that means. What's like a comparison? Okay, so France is like 551,695 square kilometers. So it's like 1/5 of France. They searched 1/5 of France for this plane. They couldn't find it. They couldn't find it anywhere. No important part of 370 was ever found. No cockpit, no black box, nothing that could help try to figure out what exactly happened. This shocked the whole world, but hope was not lost because they found one single thing. One single thing from the plane. The plane that disappeared in thin air, they found one single thing in the whole entire last 12 years. But the reason I am making this video is they are starting to search for Malaysia Airlines 370 once again this year, 2026. So maybe we'll find something now. I doubt it. I doubt it. I'm not gonna lie, guys. You'll see as you watch this video more. But however, in 2015, they did find a flaperon. I don't know how to pronounce it. Flaperon. Doesn't matter. It's a part of the wing. You look at this photo, that's what it is, and that's them finding it. Which, when they did investigate this, they could confirm it was from Malaysia Flight 370. They used its serial number and other evidence through the growth on it through the ocean, and they could 100% confirm that it was from the plane. And it washed ashore on a random island. So they didn't even, like, all that search party, all that work that they did, they didn't even do it. The ocean did it too. The ocean said, here's a hint. Literally, the ocean said, here's a hint, here you go, keep looking. We literally looked around the whole entire ocean area of the southern Indian Ocean. We could not find anything, and the ocean just said, I give up, here you go. Here's a little hint. I don't know, I think the ocean's trying to mess with us. It's like, it's playing both sides. It's taking people in, but then it's like, here you go. I don't like it. I don't like the ocean. This was the only part of 370 and probably the biggest evidence that it did indeed crash in the water. And I think most of you guys watching is probably thinking, yeah, of course it crashed in the water. What are you saying? There's so much theories of aliens abducting that a paranormal ghost came and went on the ship and took it into a ghost plane or something. There's crazy theories about Malaysia. I don't understand. People say stuff about the Bermuda Triangle. Do you know where the Bermuda Triangle? This is nowhere near the Bermuda Triangle. Does Bermuda Triangle calling Malaysia on Discord or something? I don't get. There's no way that the Bermuda. Okay, calm down. But yes, I'm sorry. This plane was not taken by aliens. They were not being probed and taken to the planet Uba Jaba Juba. It didn't happen. So sorry, guys. You know, I wish I could say that the aliens abducted us and we gotta figure that out, but I'm not looking good in this case. Maybe another one. Maybe we'll make a video on aliens. Maybe we will. In 2018, the search was ended and the cause for the crash was undetermined. That's what they named it, undetermined. They didn't want to keep looking. The ocean gave them a hint and they still didn't want to keep looking. I don't understand. So obviously this is a horrific event, a crazy mystery, but a horrible event that happened. It has caused hurt and loss for hundreds of people out there. Since 2014, people have made all types of theories, from crazy ones about aliens and Bermuda Triangles, and actual good theories that could be true. Sorry, alien and Bermuda Triangle people. No. Okay, aliens didn't take the plane. There's no evidence of that. When we go through the evidence of what we know happened, no, it can't be aliens. They found part of the plane. If the aliens abducted them, you think they left a little crumb? Left a little crumb? They might have. Maybe it is aliens. However, there have been a few theories that actually have pretty good credibility and have some chance to be possible. So let's work through these theories. We're going to avoid the pretty crazy ones and try to go to the most popular theories that actually could be plausible. This is the leading theory that most aviation professionals believe in. Mass hypoxia occurs when the body is deprived of oxygen completely. Commercial jets usually fly anywhere from 35 to 40,000 feet, which makes the outside air not breathable. But the cabin pressure of the airplane is what keeps everyone alive, so then you can go fly to wherever you want and not get killed by the crazy amount of air out there, because you can't survive 40,000 feet in the air. I can't speak. This could be caused by a slow cabin leak, smoke or fumes, electrical failure, or other events similar to that. But I gotta ask, if this happened, why did all of the systems get turned off? Why did the plane keep flying for hours? Well, if there was an electrical failure or something like that, it is possible that the pilot turned off the ACARs while troubleshooting the system and then passed out, and that's why it remained off. But how about the transponder? That's actually a very tricky question for a lot of people to answer. It was possible it was turned off to save power, but we really do not know. But if everybody did pass out, why did the plane continue flying for 6 more hours? Well, it is possible the plane was flying on autopilot when the pilot and all the passengers passed out, and it continued flying on its path until it ran out of fuel and crashed. Things like this have happened before. In 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522 had an event like this happen where the cabin pressurization failed, and the whole crew became incapacitated, and the flight continued on its path in autopilot until it ran out of fuel and then crashed. However, there is one thing that is very, very weird in my opinion. The 2005 Helios Airways plane did not get any of the systems turned off. The ACARS or the transponder, both of them were turned on still completely through the whole entire flight. But with Flight 370, both of those were turned off. So if they're proposing this theory that happened to a plane in 2005, why is the transponder and all of the data, anything that can send data to the public, why is that stuff being turned off in 370 but not turned off in the other one that happened in 2005? And there's all types of things you could say, that they turned it off to troubleshoot the plane or all this type of, there's this and that and that and that. You really aren't going to know. Although this theory is what is most commonly believed, I truly don't really think this is what happened. To me, and I mean this with all respect, it just seemed kind of like a lazy thing for the people to tell the families so that they can kind of get over it. And a lot of the families of the passengers agreed with this. Although this could be the true story of what happened, it just doesn't piece together exactly right. It does make sense to a certain extent, but there is a lot of plot holes. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Etc. So let's get into some other theories on what possibly could have happened. Now, this next theory is the most controversial, not because it is crazy out there, but because it has to do with a real human causing this plane crash. There is a lot of people that believe that the pilot had something to do with the plane crash. Now, before I get into this theory, I want to make it very, very clear that this is an entertainment and educational video displaying the facts of what happened to Flight 370 and the theories that surround it. This isn't just a theory that some random person made, this is a theory that real investigators that were investigating this had believed. Zahari Ahmad Shah was 53 years old when he piloted Flight 370. Zahari grew up in Penang, Malaysia, where he graduated with his Malaysian Certificate of Education, and according to his sister, he fell in love with planes as early as 14 or 15 years old. First began his aviation career in 1981 as a cadet pilot. Over his more than 30 years of work, he piloted many different aircrafts, and people thought of him as an amazing pilot and a highly respected pilot. There are many things that could potentially, allegedly, point to him being connected to the crash. Or at the very least, a lot of weird coincidences that just seem very weird in the context. There's been all types of talk about his marriage and how that could have gone into play, and that's not really something that I want to get into. I'm trying to go off of real evidence and real things that have happened, and as much as there is a lot of talk, even with his wife saying stuff about certain things in the marriage, that's something that has less concrete evidence to it. So as much as there was a lot of things said, including by his wife, that their marriage was going through turmoil and a lot of bad stuff was happening, there's not concurrent evidence that they were going to get a divorce or anything of that nature. That's what I meant to say, I just mixed it together. There was a lot of quotes from his wife and daughter saying he was very distant and very different before he flew Malaysia Flight 370, but nothing 100% concurrent. But when talking about a topic this serious and more emotionally charged to do with a family and potentially a person that could be responsible for this, I want to take a lot more facts and go with that, and not just hear something on the internet and go run with it. However, there are a lot of weird things that happen that point to Zahari potentially crashing the airplane intentionally. The first bit of evidence is the obvious. All of the plane systems were turned off manually. These were systems that did not turn off automatically. They were systems you had to turn off manually. And possibly the biggest bit of evidence for this theory, and one of the biggest pieces of information from this whole entire case of Flight 370, was that he indeed did change directions from the initial path very intentionally. After turning off all of the systems, he randomly changed the path of the plane, which is very, very peculiar. Again, the plane had a set path from Malaysia to Beijing, and he just took a very hard left. That's weird. It's not something that you normally would do. It's just very weird. All of the systems get turned off manually, and then he changes course to a very hard left out of the blue, out of nowhere, going nowhere near Beijing. It doesn't make sense. And that's why some people would say that the aliens took over the plane and started piloting it for themselves and started going back to the home planet of Gabagabag, and then they started doing everything. But I'm not gonna go down that path. It's, a little too far for me, far-fetched. I don't think the aliens have anything to do with this one. Maybe some other cases, but not this one. But one very weird thing is after changing course, Zahari flew next to Penang, his hometown. This part feels very, very weird. He changed courses and then flew right next to his hometown. And as I've already said, the normal altitude of a plane is around 35 to 40,000 feet. However, it is believed when he flew next to his hometown that he was going closer to 20 to 25,000 feet, over 10 or 15,000 less than normal. That's weird, unless you wanted to take a so-called final look. And I'm saying that in parentheses because, again, this is a very sore subject and something that is harder to talk about, and I'm trying to be the most respectful as I can with it. But it's something that is talked about very, very, very much, that it looks very weird that he took a random turn off course and then went next to his hometown and went 10,000 to 15,000 under normal altitude. So to a lot of people, this does look like a final look at his hometown to a lot of the people that are looking into this. After that, he rose back up and continued forward to the final resting place of 370 over the northern Indian Ocean. That is where the military transponder stopped getting anything. Now, there was also something else that is not proof, but is something to definitely keep in mind. Zahari lived in a gated community that was protected by guards 24/7. Now, normally on his way to work, he would wish the guards by saluting them in a Muslim salute, as if he was saying salam to them. But that night when he saluted the guards, he did not salute them in the normal Muslim way that he was usually doing. He saluted them in a military-style salute. As one of the guards stated in an interview, there was a striking change in the way he had saluted us that night. It was very unlike him. And those are exact words coming from an interview in 2014 of the guards that protected his house. Protected his neighborhood, not his house specifically, the whole neighborhood. The guards also reported that he took his personal BMW to work that day, which is very unusual for him. He would usually get a cab to take him from his house to his work, but today he took his own BMW and went to work, and then his cab that normally gets him arrived 20 minutes to his house after he had already left. But by far, the biggest evidence for this theory is something very, very, very weird that was found. And this is the reason when investigators were looking through all of the possibilities, this was a very, very possible one. Now, Zahari had his own personal flight simulator at home, which is very, very normal for a lot of pilots. A lot of pilots who are very serious about what they're doing and want to make sure they do it good, train on flight simulators because they can be very reliable if you make it reliable like he did. His was very high-tech. He had all types of computers, all types of machinery to make it really feel like he was flying a plane. But there was something very weird that the investigators found when searching his house. They confiscated the flight simulator and started looking through the data logs of all of the different flight paths that he had on it. Because if you don't know how a flight simulator works, it's pretty easy. You could make a set path, or you could have a preset path that would basically let you fly in a realistic way. So a lot of pilots would use this to fly different flight plans that they're going to do in a few weeks or whenever, or stuff like that, basically to just train for that flight. Not all pilots do this because you don't need to be training in a simulator to get it done right, but if you're very serious about flying and you want to make sure you do it right, a lot of people do recommend flight simulators. And he had 2,500 different files of different paths that he would go. But after confiscating his flight simulator, they looked through all the different files of different flight paths that he would practice, and they found 6 that were deleted. Intentionally deleted. Out of 2,500-ish flight paths that he deleted 6 different flight paths. I put up a 5, but it's 6. 6 different flight paths he deleted, intentionally. And in the data recovered, it confirmed that at least 1 out of the 6 deleted flight paths was a simulator flight of a Boeing 777-200ER, the exact same plane that 370 was. And that's not the weirdest part, because of course there could be tons of different Boeing 777ERs, Boeing 777-200ER. I don't know. There could be a lot of them. He could have flown multiple times in a Boeing 777-200ER. I don't know. I couldn't find anything plausible online. You know, it's really hard to find information on this kind of stuff because there's not as much evidence when it comes to nitpicky things like that. But the weirdest thing is that the simulator flying the Boeing 777-200ER started at his airport and flying all the way to the last known location of Malaysia Flight 370. The simulation was the almost exact flight that we think that he took during the flight where he crashed. It seemed very, very, very weird to a lot of investigators and a lot of different people because it was almost exactly like recreating the situation that happened a few days after, or whenever. We don't know when he created the simulator, that's not confirmed anywhere, but the fact is he created a custom flight simulator flight path of exactly where the plane went, from the airport he took off and the last known location of 370. And in the simulator, he flew the exact plane that he flew in real life. That's just very weird coincidence. It's the exact same. It's really, really weird. Now again, it could be a total coincidence. It would be a crazy coincidence, and it's just very, very weird to me. But it could be a coincidence. This is all hypothetical. But the fact that he had a simulator with the exact same plane and the exact same path, it's weird. There's so many weird things with this theory that do honestly make sense to what happened. It's hard to say. But I will say that this theory is very highly believed by aviation professionals, the family of the passengers, and multiple other people. Because the way that all of these things line up perfectly is very weird for it to be a coincidence. The fact that he has a flight simulator, and he created an exact path of where the plane took off in real life, and where the last known location was in real life, is very, very weird. But either way, that is just another theory. We do not know 100% if that is true, but that is something that I more lean to. And I mean that in full respect. I'm not trying to disrespect any deceased people, but it just fits very, very weirdly. Now I'm gonna keep this theory short, okay? The second theory was the longest we've done, and it actually had a lot of evidence. There's no evidence to this theory. This theory is wrong. If you believe it, you're wrong. I'm just kidding. But it doesn't really make sense. It really doesn't. Because when a plane gets hijacked, they need a motive, like a ransom or something like that. There was no ransom, no distress, or anything like that. If there was a hijacking, there would be more proof to point it to that. Sure, you could say after the plane took off, the hijackers took control of the plane, turned off all of the systems so nobody would know where they're going, and continued to fly. But that would mean that the plane continued to fly with the hijackers for 6 more hours, which it doesn't make sense. The hijackers would want some ransom or something of value. There's no reason that the hijackers would just want a free ride over to the South Indian Sea for no reason. It makes no sense. I honestly cannot see this as a real possibility. When you look at the other theories and look at how much evidence there is in the other theories, this makes the least amount of sense. There has been other hijacks of planes in real life. That's a very, realistic thing. But the way that this happened doesn't look anything like a hijack, and neither did it to a lot of investigators. No investigator really took on this idea. Obviously, it was something that they had to think about, because when they're thinking about all the possibilities of a plane vanishing in thin fucking air, I mean, you have to think about all the type of possibilities, but it's not something that a lot of people considered very much, except for people who didn't want to look into the facts of the story, because those are the same people that believe the aliens. And Bermuda Triangle. Bermuda Triangle was nowhere near. But as much as I don't really believe in this theory, it is very important to talk about when talking about this case because it is a theory that's been out there for quite a long time. Now, there's theories I didn't cover about alien abduction and supernatural events and other bullshit that doesn't make any sense. I didn't cover that because it doesn't make sense. So, sorry guys. So, sorry to burst your bubble, but the plane wasn't taken by aliens or ghosts or anything like that. Probably not. Probably. I can't say for sure. But I'm going to put like a 99.99.99.99.99.99.99.99.99%. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little mystery documentary, and if you guys want to see more, please let me know what mystery you want me to uncover next. This video took me hours and days to make, so I really hope all of you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider subscribing and joining the community, and comment down below what you think happened to Malaysia Flight 370, and also what mystery you would like to see in the next episode. This is very different than my normal content, but I really enjoyed making this, and I hope all of you guys enjoyed watching it, and if you guys want to see more of this, please let me know, and I definitely will. Till then, have an amazing week, and I really appreciate all of you guys showing up and supporting. I truly do, and I hope you guys enjoyed this little documentary episode. I will see all of you in the next episode of The Mysteries of the World. That was Cheetah. See you guys.